Welcome to the Experience Strategy Podcast, where we talk to customers and experts about how to create products and services that feel like time well spent. And now, here are your hosts, experienced strategists, Dave Norton and Aranza Savas.
Welcome to the Experience Strategy Podcast. I'm Aranza Savas.
And I'm Dave Norton.
Today, we are joined by Jake Kahana, a designer and entrepreneur who is one of the co-founders of Caveday, which is a really exciting company that is actively helping people improve their relationship to work. We're big fans of Caveday and the way that Jake and his co-founders have designed this experience with jobs to be done and customer modes front and center. We're excited to unpack how they went from idea and insight to activation and how they've grown by adapting over time to the ways in which we work as they've radically shifted over the past few years. Jake, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. I was so grateful to have you come in and meet with our team recently and share some of your top performance tips for co-creating, working together, how teams work, how individuals find a state of flow. And I know Dave and one of our colleagues, Joe Pine, and I all just sat there sort of vigorously nodding as we listened to you with excitement about the work that you're doing, because it brings to life so much of what Dave, Joe, and I talk about so often when it comes to creating meaningful experiences and those that are truly transformative. And I believe that the work that you're doing has the potential to transform the way people work and think about work. And so I think the second you got off stage, I frantically wrote you a note, when can we get you on the podcast so that everyone we know can learn from you and hear about what you're doing? So Thank you for being here. I'm a Caveday groupie, but in case there's some folks listening who aren't Caveday groupies quite yet, tell us a little bit about what Caveday is and how it works.
Sure. So Caveday is a membership-based community that helps each other improve our relationship to work. We focus together in work sessions every day. We join monthly accountability groups. We do weekly and monthly planning workshops, and continuing to develop new products and new ways of working together to really build the best kind of work habits that really, I think this all starts, I explained this in the workshop that I delivered to your team, that like it all starts from this insight that nobody taught us how to work, from the time we're in kindergarten through high school, college, wherever you're at in your career now, that like nobody sits us down and says, this is how to focus. This is how to make a to-do list. This is how to get your best work done. Or, when you get your best work done, it's in the morning, it's in the afternoon, and that varies by person. And the more that we know about ourselves and the more that we know the science behind the ways that we can work better, the more that we can integrate that into the habits that we create together. And so because nobody taught us how to work, so many of us are just struggling. Even before the pandemic, there were issues with burnout. There was an epidemic of, mass quitting and people just not feeling connected to their work. And I think a lot of that has to do with just having bad habits at work. There's a lot going on. I'm not going to fix it with just focus on what you're doing and learn to take breaks. That's not going to fix the whole problem. But I think it's a start to think about what role does work play in our lives and think about this idea of your relationship to work.
I think you're absolutely right. It's what we do every day that has the biggest influence on our satisfaction. And so if we are dissatisfied with this huge awake chunk of every day and the way that it's working, just looking at the book on my shelf, the way we're working isn't working, right? And it from a very different lens looks at this same question. So how did you come to create Caveday? I get this sort of fundamental insight that led you there, but what's the genesis for you of this solution?
Sure. the speleogenesis, as we call it. Speleogenesis is like the origin of the cave. We are like pretty nerdy about cave words.
I appreciate that about you. Okay.
You're lucky. You're lucky I'm not wearing my headlamp today. Sometimes we'll like fully nerd out. Anyway,
next time, please.
Sure.
You just earned yourself another spot on the podcast.
I have it. It's in my drawer.
Thank you.
So about 6 years ago, my two co-founders and I were friends, and we were like, we're all working on side projects, and we have things that we want to be doing, and we'd spend a lot of our weekends. This is, again, 6 years ago, before any of us had kids, before we went into a pandemic, and we were like, I spend most of my Sundays, working on a design project, and my co-founder Jeremy is a filmmaker, and my co-founder Molly makes events. And so we had all these projects, and we said, what would be really fun, rather than just like meet up to work at Starbucks or whatever, like, get a group to go to the library where it's nice and focused, is we all had experiences with community that were transformative, where we like did something, and because there was a group of people around us, things just felt different, more energized, more exciting. And we thought, why couldn't we bring that same energy, that energy that you feel in a workout class, in like a spin class or a yoga class, that like, I could do that kind of stuff by myself, but when I'm with other people, it's just a heightened experience. Why couldn't we bring that experience to work? And so what we did is we created what we thought was a one-off event. It was a Caveday. It was we had a co-working space in New York City that was donated on a Sunday. And we researched the ways that we can work and bring community together and create a transformative experience. And I keep using that word, transformative experience, but we did all this research on this idea of what happens when the rules in this space are different than the rules out there. Because out there, you're sort of expected to, work all the time, or, not take breaks, or check your email every 3 minutes. And we needed to create a space where the rules were a little different, where we could take away your phone at the door and, create a space where it was okay to take a break, or it was actually better to take a break. And so we created this Caveday, and we sold tickets to our friends, and we had 50 people showed up, and it was like, that was amazing. Not only did we like each make $100, and that was kind of cool, but everyone who was there to go out afterwards. And I know that seems like a little thing. Yeah, everyone wants to go out. It's New York City, right? But if you've ever done 8 hours of straight work, like we met at 9 a.m. until about 5 p.m. If you've ever, gone to the library for 8 hours, you just want to like turn off your brain after that, right? You want to like come home and not do anything. And the idea that people wanted to go out and connect and stay energized by this group was really remarkable. So we did it again. And I think after our second one, there was a journalist that came, and there was a journalist that came, and he was a writer at Fast Company, and ended up writing an article about us that was like, this is the new way of working. I'll never go back to working another way. That sort of built some momentum, and we started, it's a long journey from like working one-off in person to now running 120 sessions every week remotely. So there's been a lot of iterations. We've tested out in person and remote. We had different kinds of memberships, and now again, like I said, we run about 120 hours a week of facilitated focused work session called Caves.
Wow. And who would have thought that there was a business to be made around helping people to actually do their work? That to me is just so fascinating, that you came up with that particular idea, and yet it makes complete sense. I think about all of the Myers-Briggs tests that I've done over the years to try to make me a more effective worker. That has absolutely nothing to do with my ability to work, right? May help me connect with other people, but this is amazing. You really focused on the job that the individual needs to get done, very literally.
I think
and came up with a design.
what was interesting to us is like we would be reading these books. There's great books out there. Things like Unsubscribe, or the book Deep Work, or Undistractable, I think, near AL, and all the other research by the lots of people. I could drop names. I'm not going to continue to do that. But the problem was like, amazing, I read this book. Yes, I should put my phone away. Yes, I should, do deep work every day. And what we tried to do, and we're still doing it, is bridging the gap between the research and the practice. Is saying there's all this great learning out there, and not a lot of people, not a lot of companies are taking that and helping people apply it. And yeah, I think, Dave, you make a good point. Like, that is what we're trying to do. And I'm going to be a little humble for a second and say that it took about 4.5 years before Caveday became my full-time job. It was very much a side project. It was me and my two friends, and we would slowly build this, and we'd try to meet, 5-ish hours, 10-ish hours a week, building this little side project, always in the cave. And then, the pandemic, during the pandemic, we were very fortunate to, make some smart decisions about scaling down overhead and, lowering price and making it a little bit more accessible. And I think that we've seen a lot of growth, especially in the early pandemic, that has allowed us to now, Jeremy doesn't do as much filmmaking. I don't do as much, design projects, and Molly doesn't do as much event work. However, all of these three interesting backgrounds of filmmaking and storytelling and branding and design and events and experiences are now sort of funneled directly into the brand, which is kind of a fun outlet for our experience.
Yeah, it's like a genetic intertwine. So what are some of the impacts you've seen in individual clients and customers? What has wowed or moved you so far?
I think I'm amazed every time we get testimonials. I'm still not numb to it yet, but we work with companies and we help teams. We run workshops and trainings, and we lead private case for them. And we also, like I said, have a membership-based community. And some of the amazing things we hear are like, it feels like magic. I've never done work and felt refreshed like I do now. This feels like magic. People obviously talk about productivity, right? They're getting 3 times as much done. Amazing. And at this point, we're sort of like, yeah, of course. Like, enough with the productivity. Like, that's obvious. What amazes us more and more is the feeling that people get by being in the cave, by doing work with us, which is they're feeling refreshed. They're feeling connected. They're feeling more energized. They're feeling less burned out and more, they're surprising themselves with what they can do. It's like, I didn't even know that I could get a full day's worth of work done in 2 hours. I thought this would take, weeks, or I've been, procrastinating on this thing for months and months and months. And just in one cave, because you told me to put my phone away and just do the hard thing, I'm surprising myself with how much, not just how much I can get done, but what is possible now that I know how to work in this way and that this community is supporting me in that way. So to me, that is that improving your relationship to work is that I can get my work done more efficiently and more effectively. And I feel better and different than if I were, slogging away in an office, not slugging. Although slugging is not so far off.
No, and frankly, to be discouraged. So I'm curious what you see as the potential for a change in the ways we think about work through processes like this. What do you see as the future of how we work? If we were to continue doing caves, and if companies were to widely adopt cave working, what might happen?
It feels like the work that is required right now in terms of, solving the big problems of the world it all requires monotasking and deep work, right? You're like, what we say in the cave is like, you've probably got something big on your to-do list. In terms of your career to-do list, you want to like write a book or start a podcast or grow a company or whatever it is. Like, you have something big you want to do, and that's not going to get done multitasking, like while you have 50 tabs open and you're jumping around from thing to thing. And so not only like the best work of that is sort of stuck inside people, right? That book that needs to come out and the company that wouldn't happen unless you had the time carved out to do it. To me, it's like those big problems and the striving towards human potential is possible. I think on a more like realistic base, the idea that we can all be a little bit more happier and well-adjusted. We talk about your relationship to work as one of three in your life. You have a relationship to work, other people, and yourself. And if your relationship to work is sort of taking over your life, then you obviously don't have time for the people that you love and other relationships, and then taking care of yourself, right? Eating and sleeping and exercising. And if our relationship to work improves, if the idea of getting our best work done in an 8-hour day is possible, then we have time for the people that we love. We can build stronger communities and better families and, infrastructure in our neighborhoods that, right now is sort of, we don't have time for it because we're working all the time. And when we can take care of ourselves and we're sleeping well every night and we're, exercising and eating right, I know that seems like, yeah, of course we need to exercise and eat right, but like, it's such an underrated part of how we show up at work and how we show up in our relationships. And to us, Caveday is not a productivity company. We're not just trying to like help you get more done and hustle harder. It's the idea of like, if you can get your best work done with more focus and more energy, then have a better life. Like, go spend time with your friends and family, go take care of yourself. And to me, that's the real potential there is getting closer towards human potential.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. One of the things that you talked about in our workshop, which, for the three of us, for Francis, Joe, and I, was really important, is the impact that Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and his work on flow.
You have to have these people who can show off knowing how to say his name. I don't even dare.
Right.
I was like, David, for bringing this up, you're in charge of saying it.
Yeah, I probably didn't even say it right. I probably just sounded
You're just
confident.
gutsy enough. I appreciate it.
But talk to us a little bit about this idea of flow and how it informs what you're doing during Caveday.
Sure. So flow is, I don't mean to correct you. I know that I'm the guest on the show, but it's pronounced Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And he's a psychologist, Polish psychologist. Who
I think Jake has been practicing too.
It's not the first time so flow is this like mythical, magical mental state that most of us have experienced, where you lose track of time, you forget to eat, you forget to drink water, or go to the bathroom. You're just like fully immersed in what you're doing. And many of us have that experience, when we're hanging out with friends or exercising or playing or listening to music, dancing, those kinds of things. And top performers regularly find this idea of flow. You're like, just again, fully immersed in what you're doing. And we're trying to bring that into our work, to find flow in our work, because the mental benefits of being in flow are pretty amazing. So Csikszentmihalyi studied, lots of everyday people, but also top performers. And there's also Stephen Kotler from the Flow Research Collective, who studies peak performance as well, and Andrew Huberman from the Huberman Lab in Stanford, who study these kinds of things related to flow in terms of peak mental and human performance. And so the benefits include things like, generating more creative and novel ideas, learning things about 3 times faster, communicating more clearly, and the quality of our work goes up. And so part of this idea of flow is the most amazing thing to me is that it sort of combines science and research and like the things that we don't know about the human body. Like it feels sort of magical. And like there's research that shows there are conditions for flow, there are flow triggers that can help us get into this state more often. Things that like rituals can help us do that. So, you know, if you need to do your best work and you want to try to get into flow, you know, popping in the right kind of playlist and putting in your headphones and, you know, having a warm drink and taking 3 deep breaths, those kinds of things can help us create a ritual that gets into flow faster. Having clarity on the task at hand, you know, what is it that I'm working on, and having it be a little bit challenging, a little bit harder than what you're used to. All of these things can help guide getting into flow. But there is this magic where like, you know, sometimes it clicks into flow and your brain just works and it is magic. And sometimes, you know, there are just distractions. You're thinking about it in a way that, you know, you're overthinking and preventing yourself from getting into flow. And I think in that way, there's sort of a parallel to like meditation at work, right? There's this idea of meditation doesn't work all the time, but this idea of it being a practice and that you're trying to like get better at refocusing your attention and finding this state of, you know, heightened experience is sort of related to flow. And like I said, the benefits are astounding. People report being happier when they're in flow. And so if we can help you get into flow, right? Like you're doing better work, you're feeling more creative, you're learning faster, and you're happier. It's important that we're learning about flow and trying to bring that into our work.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. You know, part of the reason that I brought it up is our listeners know that we've been very focused on this idea that experienced strategists need to focus on modes. And what we mean by a mode is a mindset and a set of behaviors that you get into temporarily. I like to think about Mike C. See, I'm going to pretend like I know the guy, but I don't. As kind of the father of this idea of modes, that we get into modes to get certain things done. And I think what Caveday is an experience designed to help support work mode and allow you to experience flow potentially while you're in work mode, which to me is just really, really fascinating. But of course, there are other kinds of modes that you can get into that are not highly productive, right? And maybe that's where we spend most of our time.
Well, and I think that's what Jake is pointing to that's so interesting, is that when we talk about modes as a mindset and a set of behaviors that help you accomplish a goal, most of our mindsets and sets of behaviors that we have learned about how to accomplish work aren't that helpful. And so Jake and his co-founders have created an entire company around, here's actually a helpful mindset and a helpful set of behaviors that you can practice to better accomplish your job.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think part of that, I like that idea of modes and being in work modes. And I think you're right, Arantes. It's like goes back to this idea that nobody taught us how to work. And so when I'm doing work that feels really hard or really challenging, my brain, I've conditioned my brain to want dopamine in other parts of my life, right? Like when things are hard, when I'm like in an awkward conversation or, you know, with a friend, as soon as there's a break in the conversation, I want to do something that feels awkward, that feels uncomfortable. I want to look for something pleasurable and easy. So I check my phone. And same thing with work. Like when I don't really want to answer this difficult email, I don't really want to edit that long presentation. So let me just answer email. That's easier. Let me have the TV on in the background because at least I'll be entertained while I'm trying to do this hard thing. And then we get into that cycle of like, yeah, I'm in that's me in work mode, and it's actually not productive. It's actually very distracted and it's very counterproductive, even though it feels a little more pleasurable than like sitting with the hard work. And ultimately, I think, you know, all this, like I said, all this research, and we're trying to bridge that between the research and the practice, is about helping people build up this muscle of sitting with the hard thing, learning to refocus your attention once you get distracted, learning how to take breaks, and that breaks are not just a chance for you to fall behind in your work, but actually helpful in terms of energizing you and helping you focus for the next session.
Yeah, and I think it's more important than ever. I've spent the last 20 years in behavior change and motivation, and accountability is a big factor in how most of us tap into motivation. And being remote has really shifted our sense of perceived accountability to our work and to other people. And I think one of the things that's really smart about your design is the expression of a commitment at the start of each session, so that people are saying, hey, strangers who I may never see again, but who function as accountability partners for me in this moment, this is the thing I'm committing to do today or in this hour. Our brains aren't, I mean, they're pretty sophisticated, but there are some places where they can easily be confused. And this is one of them. Just the act of saying that to anyone functions in the same way as me telling my boss I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it serves a double purpose. There's the purpose of sharing it with other people and sort of the social and external accountability. But also, like I said before, when you're clear for yourself about what you're working on, it's easier to find flow. Because I don't know if you're the same way, but like before Caveday and even some nights now where I'm like, I have a lot to do. I'm going to, I finished my work day. I'm going to work tonight. Right. When you have to I need to work tonight before bed, and we all do it. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect. I still check my phone and check my email more than I should. Like, this is a practice, right? We're all getting better at it. And to me, for a long time, work, when I was working, it was like, I'm just in front of my computer and I know that I have to work. And so I'm like sort of doing email and I'm sort of cleaning up my files and I'm sort of, doing the presentation and project that I really want to make progress on. But to your point, Francis, it's like when you're clear about what you're doing, what is the task? That I know that you were making a point about accountability, but I also think, like you said at the end, that our brains don't work as well as we want them to when we need them to.
It's really the genius behind a Post-it, the original Post-it. You can only fit so much content on a Post-it. So it causes people to get a little more clear and specific about what it is they're communicating either to themselves or to others.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I like about what you're doing. And I think, those strategists that are focused on employee engagement, I think this is a really radical idea and a very, very true to what you should be focused on kind of idea. That you, as someone who is supposed to help employees get the most out of their work, should be thinking about constraints in a way that causes them to actually produce better results in a more positive way. And that's really, to a large degree, like you talked about ritual, you talked about flow, but a lot of what you're doing is saying we have these established constraints that are going to help you to let go of all of the things that are peripheral and to really focus. And I can't think of anything that's more important, especially with remote work, than this ability to introduce constraint into what somebody is trying to do from a work standpoint. I know I certainly need it. I put all kinds of constraints on myself, and I still find ways to get out of doing the hard work.
Yeah. I think that you make a good point. And some of our research right now has a lot to do with, we try to find the trends going on in workplaces. And a big conversation right now is the idea of the 4-day work week. And how research continues to show how people are more productive with less time. And when you don't have the 40-hour work week, which actually tends to be closer to 50 or 60 when you think about working from home, and the actual time that we're working is not very efficient. So we stretch that day. And that research is related to constraints. This idea that not only have we learned that when we have less time to do our work, we like sort of cut out the extra wasting of time and we just get to work. It's like Parkinson's law and a couple other theories and psychological ideas. But it's related to 100 years ago, like labor unions saying, people can't work like machines. People need breaks. People need a 40-hour work week. And when we learn more, hey, actually 32 hours or, 4 days is actually enough. Amazing things can happen because of the constraint that it brings on our work. And I'm in favor of the 4-day work week. And I think there's a lot of research that backs that up. That I think is really impactful to think about. When you're talking, Dave, about managers and bosses and company owners and entrepreneurs, thinking about how do you get the most out of your people. It's not to treat them like machines, to say we need more time at work and more, but to really think about the best work is about sort of creating constraints and less work, and thinking about breaks and thinking about the flow of the week and energy, and not like a purple crystal energy, but when are you the most energized and when are you sort of drained and exhausted?
Yeah. Well, and I think it really comes down to us rethinking what it means to work well, what the goals and the and impact are. One of the things that got us really excited about talking to you, Jake, is that we have just released the first ever Experience Strategy Trend Report. And one of the top trends that we see continuing into 2023 and having an expanding influence is the pervasiveness of wellness and well-being in every category, from finance to even travel and, of course, healthcare. And really, the list goes on and on. We're seeing it in surprising places like how we manufacture even. And so I really think that the place we will see the traction continue to build the most in the coming year is in how we work, because we are at a crisis point, and we've undergone a destabilization of the norm in our ways of working in a way that I just think has undeniably changed all of us and set us up to be more intentional and mindful about how we do it. So it's a perfect moment to change and break the rules. And companies like yours who are looking at the jobs to be done and at the immediate needs of the customers, who in this case are the people who want to get work done, whether they be entrepreneurs or employees, that they are so ripe and ready for what you're doing. I'm so glad that you're doing it in such a thoughtful, well-researched, strategic way. Really, it's exciting to watch, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to really focus with us today on this topic.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I hope that continues to be a trend where people are focused on wellness and people really reconsider their focus and the role that work plays in their life. And we're trying to do the same. We're trying to help people along the way. So thanks for having me.
So Dave, I want to put you in the hot seat for a second before we wrap up here. What are the top lessons you believe experienced strategists should take from this conversation?
Well, I am completely impressed by every step of their process. First of all, they identified an unmet need, right? For themselves. That's where they began, was with this unmet need for themselves. I need to learn how to work environment. Then they wrapped in an experience around it. Very focused experience. They knew exactly what it is that they were trying to do. They tapped into some of the best research that they could find out there, and they designed using principles of human behavior some of the best psychologists out there. And they really, I'm sure, you would say, Jake, that the pandemic helped you to actually focus even more and maybe even grow even faster than you would have otherwise, because people had to change the way that they worked. And I love the fact that what you're doing has principles, values, a real need, and yet it is, for the most part, a protocol and a teachable protocol that you facilitate, but people can also learn. There's just so much that Caveday is doing right. And Jake, I think you guys are just fantastic examples of experience design and experience strategy. So well done.
Thanks. I'm going to be humble, but it doesn't come without work and checking ourselves and talking to the people who we're serving and making sure that it works for them too. So I really appreciate that. I'll take that as a giant compliment. Thanks.
I'm going to add to the list of top things experienced strategists should learn from this. Listen to your customers. Keep asking for feedback. I am amazed at how many companies miss that extraordinary opportunity in product development and certainly in experience design. Jake, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for the big, important work that you're out there doing. I'm excited to see the impact this has on certainly your customers, but also companies and the ways we work in general. Dave, thanks for being a rad co-host. Listeners, thank you for telling us what you want and need and letting us practice what we preach here and adapt to current circumstances. We're so excited to share the Experience Strategy Trend Report with you. Find it on our website at stonemantle.co. Keep talking to us. Let us know what you want to hear more of, who you want to hear from, and how we can help you raise the tide of experience strategy.
Thank you for listening to the Experience Strategy Podcast. If you're having fun nerding out with us, please follow and share wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Find more episodes and continue the conversation with us at experiencestrategypodcast.com.